yesterday regarding the presumptive blood tests that were conducted by Detective Riley that he will be testifying to today. So that needs to be addressed prior to his testimony.
Thank you. Are you ready to call your witness?
I am, Your Honor.
Thank you. Bring the jury in, please. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We resume today with a state witness, and this is
If I may, Your
Detective
Honor.
Pearson, correct?
Yes, Your Honor. Sergeant Jamie Pearson. May I approach the clerk, Your Honor?
Yes.
May I approach the clerk? Thank you.
You could please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you shall give concerning this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Sergeant Jamie Pearson, Jamiepearston.
Sergeant, you may be seated.
Affiliations?
Connecticut State Police, Western District, Major Crime.
Thank you.
You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Good.
You currently work with the state police?
Yes.
Okay. And your current rank, please?
Sergeant,
How long have you been a sergeant with the Connecticut State Police?
approximately 2 years.
If I may just, thank you. Could you please describe some of your training and experience with the state police?
Yes, I was hired in 2008. At the time, I attended the State Police Academy. I have received extensive training throughout the course of the academy, as well as outside institutions, to include interview, crime scene processing, scene mapping, photography, evidence collection, blood pattern analysis, and various other things.
Are you with a particular division or department within the Connecticut State Police?
Yes, Western District Major Crime.
Okay. And do you specialize in any, I guess, a specific part of major crimes?
Yes, I'm currently the supervisor of the crime scene van.
When you say crime scene van, can you just briefly explain what that is?
Yes, each district is assigned a van unit, which is comprised of detectives that is responsible for processing crime scenes, to include scene documentation, photography and such, as well as analysis, interpretation.
And you are currently the sergeant for Western District?
Yes.
In 2019, what was your role?
I was a detective within the same crime scene van unit.
How long have you been working in the van unit total?
I began in 2018 as a detective and assumed command upon promotion.
And which was when?
2021.
Thank you. I'm going to draw your attention specifically back to that May 2019 timeframe. Did you have an occasion to respond to 69 Wells Lane in New Canaan?
Yes.
Do you recall when you responded?
I responded on the 27th.
Was that the first time that you responded there?
It was.
Okay, so you did not go on the 24th or 25th?
No.
Okay. What was your, or why did you respond there?
I was tasked with producing a scene map as the continuation of scene processing was extended to the 27th.
Was anyone from New Canaan Police Department on scene when you arrived?
Yes, there was a marked cruiser securing the scene.
And who else from the Connecticut State Police was on scene with you?
Myself, Lieutenant Colonel Davison, Detective Riley, Detective Hazen, Detective McGavin. I believe that was it.
And you mentioned a sketch map. Is that what you, could you just explain what that is?
Yes, we take measurements from the scene to produce a map which would depict spaces, whether it's size of a building or the room, the crime scene in question, as well as evidence in its relation to the scene.
In this case, what did you mean by scene?
I was tasked with mapping the garage of 69 Wells Lane.
What's the purpose of a sketch map?
We want to memorialize the location of evidence, as well as other items. It could be furniture or things of interest, things of value.
And you mentioned a few names of individuals who were with you. In the course of going through the garage, or what were their assignments?
Lieutenant Colonel Davison was called in to assist with the blood pattern analysis. Sergeant McGavin was the scene officer, so he produced a scene report. Detective Riley was responsible for evidence collection, and Detective Hazen took photographs.
And you mentioned a blood pattern analysis. What is that?
It's when the blood presented is analyzed and interpreted.
Are you trained in blood pattern analysis?
Yes.
Is that in any way connected to reconstruction of a crime scene?
I am not trained to the same level as others. I have a basic understanding and knowledge of blood stain.
You did not conduct the blood pattern analysis in this case, did you?
I did not.
Okay, who did?
Lieutenant Colonel Davison.
Now, have you worked with Lieutenant Colonel Davison previously?
Yes.
About how often?
I began on patrol in 2008 with, at the time, Trooper Davison, but I've known him throughout my entire career, and when I joined Major Crime in 2013, he was in the unit, and we worked together throughout that tenure.
Now, in the course of creating a sketch map, are there certain steps you take?
Yes.
Could you just walk through with some of those steps that you do?
Once the items are, items of evidentiary value, I should say, once they are identified, I produce field notes where I am measuring them in to the scene and memorializing it in a note pattern. I then take the notes and put it into a report and produce a actual map utilizing Easy Street Draw, which is the program.
What types of tools do you use when you create the sketch map?
Various things. In this case, I used a laser distance measurer as well as a steel measuring tape.
Like Kid, Your Honor states 8, I believe, is a full exhibit, no objection?
That's correct, no objection.
States 8 will be admitted as a full exhibit.
I may just have 1 minute to sign in, Your Honor. May I inquire, Your Honor, and of the clerk, if the televisions are on?
No.
May I just have a moment, Your Honor?
They're on there.
No, there's. Is Your Honor? Sergeant Pearson, if you can please take a look at what is conveyed on the screen behind you. And if I may, this is states 8, picture 1, which is actually a PDF. And Your Honor, I will say this is with respect to Sergeant Pearson, I have to alternate between PDFs and photographs, so it might not go as smoothly as I hope. With respect to what's behind you, Sergeant, if you can just, do you recognize that?
Yes,
What is it?
that is the first map of 8, which is an overall of the garage located at 69 Wells Lane.
Now, you talked a little bit about taking measurements and utilizing a ruler and a tape measure, I guess? Is that a way to
Yes.
say it? Thank you. Can you walk us through, perhaps explain how you use those tools to create this map?
Yes, in this case, I use a rectangular coordinate method, which is the method where you have 2 steel tapes on the ground in this instance, and they intersect at a right angle to determine a distance from 2 known points. In this case, it was the footings of the poured cement garage floor.
Would you mind, please, Your Honor, may I ask her to go up to the screen point? Thank you. Sergeant Pearson, can you please head on up? When you say the footings, what do you mean?
Around the perimeter, there's approximately 3¼ inches of cement that protrudes to the interior of the sheetrock walls.
And do you have a marking next to that, and you have an arrow directing it? This is in the, I guess, the bottom middle of the PDF. And a number on the top, it says 3.25. What does that mean?
That's the approximate measurement of that protrusion of cement.
Could you please explain on the, I guess, working your way from left to right, if you could just explain some of the markings. You have A, B, C. What is that?
So these were evidentiary zones that allowed us to segment the garage into a more workable space. And then I was able to take measurements from each evidentiary zone and elaborate or blow it up into a larger map.
With respect to the, I guess, zone G, why is that in the middle, or why is that depicted like that?
So G contained a vehicle at the time of processing, and we mapped G with the Range Rover in place as found by detectives.
And D, E, F?
Same as A, B, and C, it was in the southernmost garage bay. It was split into 3 evidentiary zones.
On the upper right side, or I'm sorry, not even upper right side, but on the right side, there is an arrow that has a number. I think it's 21, starting with 21. Can you just explain what that is?
Yep, so this is the interior dimension from wall to wall, which would be east-west in a measurement of 21 feet 1 inch.
Did you measure from, I guess it would be north-south as well?
I did, so from north to south, footing to footing, the interior measurement was approximately 33 feet and 11 inches.
Now, you also have writing on the left-hand side, and I'm putting my cursor on it over here. What does this mean?
This is part of our map legend, which is generally included in every map that we produce, and it includes the case number, the date, the type of case, the location, my name and signature, as well as the scale, north arrow, and whether or not it's one of the series.
Now, there's a marking right in, I guess, grid B that states area of convergence. What is that?
Area of convergence was determined on scene through measurements of the blood stains found relevant to this investigation. It's where a line is drawn through the long axis of each blood stain, and where those lines intersect in a 2-dimensional plane is what's called the area of convergence.
Did you determine the area of convergence in this case?
I did not.
Who did?
Lieutenant Colonel Davidson.
Is the area depicted on the map conveyed at the area B where it says area of convergence? Is that documented where that area was determined to be?
Yes, approximately.
Okay. And up here on G, on the, I guess, top middle, what is that supposedly supposed to depict?
That was two wooden stairs that left the garage floor and entered a entry door into a mudroom of the home.
You can have a seat, Sergeant Pearson. Did you map any other part of the garage, or I'm sorry, not the garage, the residence?
I did not.
On states 8, picture 2, Sergeant Pearson, if you can just take a look behind you. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes,
What is it?
that is the northernmost garage bay of 69 Wells Lane.
And I also see an A, B, C. What are those markings?
Those correspond with the evidentiary zones that we just saw in the map in that left or northernmost bay.
Did you conduct this, by the way, did you put the yellow marking tape down?
I did not.
Okay, who did?
Lieutenant Colonel Davison.
Was that done before any seizing of exhibits or documentation of any exhibits that were found in the garage?
On the 27th, yes.
And I'm going to draw your attention to right behind you again. Sergeant Pearson, do you recognize what's depicted on the screen? This is states 8, picture 3.
Yes.
What is it?
This is a blowout of evidentiary zone A in that northern garage bay.
Would you mind also getting back up and pointing to a few things? I apologize, thank you. Okay, on the, I guess, right middle, there are these dots with a letter and number, A18, A17, A16. What are those supposed to represent?
So items that are listed not as an exhibit, so for example, 18, 17, and 16, as well as 15, 14, 13, and 12, those are items that were used for blood pattern analysis. Not
Were-
necessarily exhibits unless it states next to it.
So with respect to A18, and then there's a parentheses, exhibit number 41, parentheses, close parentheses, what does that mean?
That is a piece of evidence, so seized as exhibit 41, but also utilized in the blood stain pattern analysis.
So with respect to any documentation on your map that has a letter and number, it is only the ones, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, that have the exhibit next to it that were seized as exhibits in this case.
Yes,
And the others were used for reconstruction?
analysis, yes.
Analysis.
And the A corresponds to the evidentiary zone.
Okay. I may see, I'm gonna do states 3, photograph 4. And if I can, do you recognize what's depicted on that photograph?
Yes,
What is depicted in that photograph?
this is evidentiary zone A.
Okay. Now, when something is seized as an exhibit, is it set as you delineated on your map, or is there a corresponding, I guess, a sticky or marker tag or placard that is used on that to document it on the scene?
Yes, so typically if it is an item of evidentiary value, it is either noted by a yellow evidence placard, it could be a sticky scale which has the exhibit number on it, it could be an arrow, something that could later be photographed and then mapped in to the scene.
Okay. States 8, picture 5. Sergeant Pearson, can you please explain what's depicted on states 8, picture 5?
This is evidentiary zone B, also in the northernmost bay of 69 Wells Lane.
And on the left-hand side, there are those numbers, B11, B10, and B9. Is that similar to what you just testified for in A?
It is, so again, items used for analysis within the B evidentiary zone are assigned B and a numeric. If it was used as evidence, we included the exhibit number
Now,
adjacent.
there are exhibit numbers here, if you can, that have a box or square, I should say, as opposed to a circle and no letter enumeration. It just says exhibit 43. Do you see where I'm pointing out?
Yes.
Can you explain that for me?
This is an item that was seized from evidentiary zone B, however, not utilized for blood stain pattern analysis.
Okay. And does your map on B also show the area of convergence designated
Yes.
by Mark Davidson?
Yes,
Thank
on
you.
the right-hand side of the map.
Page 8, picture 6. What does this depict?
This would be evidentiary zone B with exhibit 42.
And picture 7?
Evidentiary zone B with exhibits 42, 43, and various sticky scales that I referred to earlier.
And you pointed to the bottom right as an example. Is that an example of what you were saying designated as a exhibit or a marking that was used for reconstruction? Here,
These may have been, I can't quite see.
I can scroll up.
Yes, so that's an exhibit. It looks like, I can't tell. if
It's a little blurry because
Yeah,
it's
58 or
zoomed in,
38, but
but if I can refer you back to your garage B map, would those, the stickies that you're pointing to, would they correspond with you're pointing to B3, B4, B5?
yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna show you states 8, picture 8. Briefly, if you can explain please what's depicted in that photograph?
Yeah, this is evidentiary zone C with items for analysis and exhibits of 69 Wells Lane.
The 9 on the bottom, down here, I am putting my cursor over it, do you see
Yes.
that?
Yes,
Can you explain what that is?
that is a 9-foot wide garage door, overhead garage door, traditional garage door.
And the 3 on the left-hand side?
That is a 3-foot window.
And states 8, picture 9. Do you recognize that?
Yes,
What is it?
this is the northernmost garage bay, evidentiary zones A, B, and C.
And the zone marked with C, is that corresponding with your map?
Yes,
I'm gonna show you states 8, picture 10. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
yes.
What is it?
Evidentiary zones D, E, and F in the southernmost garage bay.
Did you map those sizes as well?
I did.
Okay, states 8, picture 10. Do you recognize what's depicted on the screen?
Yes.
What is it, please?
Evidentiary zone D with the relevant exhibits seized.
States 8, picture 11. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes.
What is it?
Evidentiary zone D.
Now, on picture 11, states 8, actually gonna zoom in a little bit. There are these, I guess, white, backwards L-shaped things. If you can just explain what those are.
That is a scale typically used in photography to photo evidence and have a standardized scale in the photo.
States 8, picture 12. Do you recognize this photograph, please?
Yes.
What is it?
Evidentiary zone E.
And states 8, picture 13. Could you please explain what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes, it's a photo of evidentiary zone E.
States 8, picture 14. Same question, Sergeant, if you can.
Evidentiary zone F.
Now, did you, in the course of creating these maps, document every single thing that was seen in the photographs, the preceding photographs that I showed you?
No, I documented and measured in items of evidentiary value or items utilized for blood stain pattern analysis.
With respect to some of the markings that are, well, strike that if I can, states 8, picture 15. Do you recognize what's depicted here?
Evidentiary zone F.
Now, with respect to items that are seen in this photograph, is every single thing that has either a white L-shaped ruler or other marking contained in your map, states 8, picture 14? I'm going to put that up again. If you put the two side by side, it may take me a while and I might break my computer if I attempt to do that, but is everything contained in that photograph contained in your map?
No.
Okay. Oh, why is that?
The items, if we refer back to the photo, there's items nearest the trash can that have the large L scales. We just discussed those appear to be transfer type stains, but not seized as evidence or utilized in blood stain pattern analysis.
So with respect to some of those transfer type stains or markings in the garage, did you document those in your sketch map?
No.
Were those documented otherwise?
In photography, yes.
States 16, I'm sorry, it states 8, picture 16. Show you picture 16. Do you recognize what's depicted on the screen?
Yes, this is evidentiary zone G.
With respect to exhibit 67, is that related to a actual exhibit?
It is not. Originally, an item was designated as exhibit 67 and subsequently photographed and mapped in. And it was later learned that it had been relocated and not seized as an exhibit. Therefore, I submitted an additional addendum map to correct that.
With respect to exhibit 67, do you know where exhibit 67, was there actually something that was delineated 67? Should say that.
On this map?
No.
Yes, so 67 was seized from the northern garage door, the interior side of the garage door.
And states 8, picture 17. What does this depict?
This is the vehicle that was located in evidentiary zone G with, it looks like several exhibits on the side as well as exhibit 44.
And when you conducted your analysis with respect to creating the map, the vehicle was in place?
Yes.
Okay, you can have a seat, Sergeant. Thank you. With respect to any of the evidence that was collected on 69 Wells or in the garage, did you have anything to do with the evidence collection process?
No.
With respect to the Land Rover or Range Rover, actually, that you see on the screen behind you, did you have anything that day or anything to do with the evidence collection process with the Range Rover?
No.
Okay. With respect to a Chevy Suburban, are you aware there's a Chevy Suburban related to this case?
Yes.
Were you involved in the processing of that item?
Yes.
Okay. What day were you involved in that?
We traveled to New Canaan Police Department that following day, so the 28th.
And what was your assignment with respect to the Chevy Suburban?
I took the inventory of the Suburban.
By inventory, what do you mean?
We document the vehicle as found by Western District Major Crime detectives, and we inventory the items seized as well as the condition of the vehicle and some like mileage, damage, things like that.
Would that also include any blood spatter or anything that is, I guess, evidence processing? I don't know if that's the correct way to say it, but would it include it, if you can understand the question?
So that day, we did process the vehicle fully, but the inventory does not contain evidence in that report.
Oh, what is the purpose of doing an inventory report?
We want to document everything that was found in the vehicles so far as like personal belongings, or I mentioned damage, mileage, things like that.
In the course of conducting the inventory search of the 2017 Chevy Suburban, did you determine if there were any WeatherTech liners in the vehicle?
Yes.
What do you mean by WeatherTech liners, or what are we talking about? So we're on the same page for what a WeatherTech liner is.
Yes, it's a custom formed, but it's a hard rubber mat that protects the vehicle floorboards, interior vehicle floorboards.
And were those custom mats inside the vehicle?
Yes.
Where?
The front left and front right had individual ones, and then there was a very large mat that spread from the second row passenger to the third row rear passenger. One large mat.
Was there a WeatherTech liner in the trunk of that vehicle?
No.
Nothing further, thank you.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Sergeant Pearson.
Good morning.
I think we've spoken before.
Yes.
I just have a few questions about what you did at the residence in New Canaan. When you placed, there are a couple of pictures I just want to ask you about, and if I would ask that if we could put up just for a minute Exhibit 10A. And if you just look back there for a second.
We don't have a 10.
It's numbered, it's the Exhibit 8, but it's, 10. This is 10A from Exhibit 8 that you were just showing a little bit. And I'm just going to ask you if you would please explain. There is the yellow tape that's placed on the measuring tape. Is that in inches or in centimeters?
I believe it's just inches. I don't recall if the other side has metric measurements. I'd have to look at it closer.
Right, and you're aware of the fact that if it's metric, there are approximately 2.54 centimeters to 1 inch, correct?
Yes.
Okay, you'll take my word for it.
I will.
All right. Can I zoom in a little bit, please, on the yellow tape measure, please? Zoom it in. And of course, it's a little bit blurry, but you can't tell from here whether it's inches or centimeters, is that right?
It appears to just be inches.
Okay. And then there's the little, if we could zoom out again, please. Now, you also made reference to some of these white tapes, and again, I'm just gonna, I'm referring to, we're talking about these little white items such as what's on the blown up image now. Now, we can't read this in the blow up, can we?
I cannot.
So let me go to, let's go to Exhibit 11 and see if we can see it any better, please. And for the record, this is Garage D. This is the section of the garage that you called, I think, D, correct?
Yes.
The portion? All right. And if we can look at, there are a bunch of these little white tapes down there. If we could just slightly zoom in on the white L-shaped portion. Let's do the larger one there. Now, there are little numbers that do appear on this photograph. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell whether those are in inches or in centimeters or millimeters for that matter?
I'm familiar with the largest of the two scales, and that is metric. The smaller may have, it looks like it's all metric.
Okay. And do you recall whether the numbers are, the number you see marked centimeters or millimeters? I'm assuming centimeters, but I'm asking you.
Yes, centimeters. The smallers would be millimeters.
All right, now if you look at the bottom right of this blow up there where you see the yellow tape down at the bottom there, and again, I'm just gonna, for the record, these appear to be centimeters as well, do they not?
I believe they're inches.
Okay, fair enough. But if you compare the yellow to the white, you'll see that the measurements in yellow are, of course, where each number is larger than the number of spaces with the lines up at the white part. Is that correct?
Yes.
So just for the benefit of me, so if we're looking at the red mark that I'm now circling here, that's between the L shape of the white centimeter markings. Could you just describe, based on those measurements, the approximate size, and again, I'm not going to ask you to get up there and measure it, but how approximately sized you see this red mark there, approximately how long that is and how wide it is?
I'm merely guessing, but a couple inches, possibly.
Okay. All right. And if you would now please go to number 17 on Exhibit 8, please. And you indicated that you marked the something on the ground there under the tire, that you placed that yellow marker on that in that photograph, correct?
No, I did not.
Can you just tell us who placed the markers?
I would guess the evidence officer did that.
Right. So when you say you guess, you weren't there when that was done,
I
right?
did not see that, no.
Right. So you didn't have a say in which places markers would be placed,
No.
correct? So you come in there, on this occasion, at least at the garage, to document what someone has already done with regard to the yellow placards.
Yes,
What about the white? We have a couple of those same white markers on the side of the Range Rover, correct?
yes,
Did you place those?
I did not.
So as I understand it, and what about the yellow measuring tape in inches that's marking off the quadrants?
I did not place those.
All right. So someone else, do you know who did that, by the way?
The yellow tapes would have likely been Lieutenant Colonel Davison. The evidentiary items with the white scales or yellow placards, likely the evidence officer,
Okay.
Detective Riley.
But again, you weren't there for that, so you don't know.
I was there, I didn't do it though.
But you don't recall seeing who did it. It's 4.5 years ago.
No, I do not recall.
All right. But did anyone direct you on what to take pictures of on that occasion?
I didn't take any photographs.
No, I'm including the ones we're looking at right now. You took that one, didn't you?
I did not. I didn't take any photographs at 69 Wells. I simply mapped the garage.
I misunderstood. You
Yeah.
only did the measurements.
Correct.
And you used the measurements for your map design, which we saw, correct?
Yes.
So, and so I'm clear, of all the photographs that you were shown and you were asked to describe, you took none of those.
I did not.
The measurement maps that we have, you documented what was already in photographs that someone else did, is that right?
Yes.
And then you added it to your various maps that we saw, right?
I did not. The state did. It's not in my report. I simply included the maps and my narrative in my report.
So when you say the state did, I'm not sure I understand. What do you mean by that?
I think it was prepared for court that way.
Oh, but did you not prepare the actual PDF maps that we just saw?
Yes, just not the photographs.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
You didn't have photographs interconnected with those, with your maps?
Correct.
You just did maps?
Yes.
I have no further questions, thank you.
Is there a redirect?
No, sir, thank you.
Or did you make that, sir?
Thank you.
Your Honor, if I may have a brief 5-minute break just to set up the computer with respect to Detective Riley. He is my only other witness for today, but there is some documentation the state wishes to show him.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is just a matter of setting up for the next witness. We would ask that you return to the deliberation room. Please do not discuss the case.
Do you want me to call them up on my computer?
Yeah.
The court's order is that there be no photos taken for which we can hear a click. That is not permitted. So if you can muffle the click, that would be in compliance with the order. Do we have to take up the argument on the motion to preclude presumptive blood testing at this point?
Yes, Your Honor. If I just have a moment to, It's my understanding that through this witness, the state is going to try to introduce at least 3, perhaps 4, because I went through this last night, photographs of the glow of either luminol or Kastle-Meyer, which is shortened in some documents to KM, which is the reagent test, the presumptive test for blood. I had cited in my motion State versus Moody. I also cited the New Jersey appellate court case of State versus Pittman and the Arkansas case of Young versus State, which were subsequent to Moody, that all stand for the proposition that the presumptive test for blood, whether they use luminol or they use the Kastle-Meyer product, is some kind of an aerosol spray that reacts to different substances. One of the substances is blood. There's other fluids that do, but also certain kinds of cleansers do, certain rust products do. There may be I saw one article that listed 30 things that react to it. Now, I'm not sure, other than what the state mentioned yesterday, the idea that it should come in just so that the state can explain why certain pictures were taken. We're about to see, I didn't count them all, but about 40 photographs that cover all of these same areas. We've already seen pictures of drops of blood, alleged blood, or blood-like stains from both the Suburban and from the garage. We also had the video that showed and there were zoom-ins of the same thing, as well as the body camera showing something that was a blood-like stain. Now, State versus Moody addresses 2 issues, and the case that was mentioned yesterday, the Grant case, and there are a couple of other appellate court cases. There were 2 issues in Moody, and I want to make this clear because the state has kind of conflated the 2 issues. The first issue in Moody was whether or not a lay witness or anyone else, a police officer, could imply that something looked like blood, and whether a lay opinion was appropriate in the absence of confirmatory testing. Both in Moody, there's another case called Whipple, State versus Whipple, where they discuss that, and then in Grant, they explain the difference between the findings in Moody and Whipple, and in the Grant case, where it wasn't about luminol, it wasn't about this presumptive blood testing, it was instead about whether a lay witness can say, it looked like there was a pool of blood, the person was bloody, etc. And that was the issue in those later cases. I think I emphasized yesterday, I don't want to have to re-quote it, but the Supreme Court specifically, the Supreme Court of Connecticut has specifically said that there is absolutely no probative value whatsoever in the presumptive testing. And therefore, the fact that they took some additional photographs, which we're going to have every inch of these vehicles being photographed anyway, because there's a presumptive test that glowed, is going to confuse the jury. And I'm going to explain, it's not just going to be about here. Later on, when they do the presumptive test of the glow, the luminol in the Tacoma, it wasn't blood at all. It's not human. It's not organic. So it's the only possible reaction of this jury is they're going to be thinking that somehow, the fact that this it glowed in the blue light, there must be more blood there. There's as the court is well aware, there is not very much blood at all on either scene, either on the Suburban, which now the court has seen, or in the garage. So the danger here is the prejudice is the jury's going to think, oh, well, there's more because this spray makes it look like there was even more that we're not picking up. But in both cases, as far as I know, when they tested it, it was, when it went to the lab, it was not blood. But when we get back to the issue at hand, since it has no probative value under Moody, and the issue has to do with whether or not it's going to either be confusing or in some way prejudicial. If they're going to try and introduce it, then I insist that we have a Porter hearing, because if the court, I thought it's already been decided that it has no value, and a lab person down the road may testify to that, but in light of your ruling from yesterday, if the state doesn't ask a subject matter, I don't get to cross-examine about it, and only if I decide to put on a case in the defense case would it even come out. And so, in following the court's rulings and the way the court wishes to proceed, we're talking about 3 or 4 pictures today through Detective Riley, or I don't know if he's now a sergeant, but he was a detective at the time, and asking in the question why he took certain pictures, which I submit is irrelevant since they took pictures of everything and documented everything. So in light of the decision in Moody and in the case of State versus Whipple, where there's such a strong view by the Connecticut Supreme Court that has no probative value, and they use the word whatsoever, that it will only lead to prejudice. And I submit that the argument that, well, they can distinguish Moody, not on this issue. There is not a single case that I could find anywhere that said that it had probative value at all. That is, we're talking about this reagent spray test, had any probative value whatsoever, but there's a lot of not only danger of prejudice, but confusion. What's the jury going to think? What's the court going to instruct the jury? That it has no value and we're only putting it in because that's where the officer wanted to take pictures? There's like 40 pictures we're about to see from Detective Riley. The whole car, the 3 pictures where they use the blue light to do that, or the black light rather, and it looks blue in the photographs. There's no explanation for it. There's no legitimate basis for it. So on those bases, I ask the court to preclude, again, we're talking about 3 or maybe 4 pictures out of 40 which are going in. I could also argue cumulative, but we don't even get to that in light of the fact that there's just such danger with this particular misunderstanding and misapprehension for what's essentially junk science. There are a lot of things I'll give you one last example and I'll sit down. There could be a situation where a police officer conducts a polygraph test and said, yes, polygraphs are not admissible, but based on what was said, I then went and did X. But of course, the Supreme Court has said you can't bring in polygraph for any reason because it's not reliable and has no probative value. So to use that as the reason for conduct by a police officer in this case would certainly be more prejudicial than probative. And it's also not necessary for the state's case to prove their case. I just have 1 minute. I've also been reminded that in Moody, the court talked about how that particular piece of evidence had an impact on the jury. And that's why the Supreme Court was so adamant that it's not admissible, because it has no validity in either science or in the law. Thank you.
So first, Attorney Schoenhorn, the court wants to understand what the nature of the testimony may be from this next witness. So this next witness took photographs, is that correct?
No. No, that is not correct, Your Honor. If I may interject, the next witness didn't take any photographs. The next witness is the evidence officer who determined which items in the garage to seize as exhibits and or document as evidence. He authored an evidence report or exhibit report, which indicates every item that is documented on Sergeant Pearson's map. He is the individual who made that decision in connection with with Lieutenant Colonel Davidson to examine those items. He also, if you look at the exhibit report, did KM testing on around 30 of those exhibits, Your Honor. Some of which, about 4 of them, came back negative. He documented that as well. There are about 3 or 4 photographs the state intends to introduce as well with respect to the luminol that was done on the car that counsel is referring to, but it's not by itself what this detective is testifying to. He's testifying to the content of the photographs, not taking them. So just to be very clear on that.
Well, what is his testimony expected to be?
His testimony is going to walk through the garage, identify the items that were seized as exhibits in 69 Wells itself, in the house.
So let the court interject here. His testimony is going to be what items were seized that were of evidentiary value, correct?
And what he did when he processed the scene, yes.
Let's just talk about what he decided to seize.
Yes, Your Honor.
So his testimony is going to be he decided to seize what?
With respect
to
the
this
presumptive test. Yes, Your Honor. He worked in connection with Lieutenant Colonel Davidson with respect to the blood pattern analysis that was done. He seized various swabbings of various blood spatter that was found, including some of the exhibits. He tested them for using the KM test. He then swabbed them, the process of swabbing them, and logging them as exhibits in this case.
So again, the court has to ask this question. What he did was swab those areas of that vehicle or garage floor, correct?
He swabbed those areas and he performed the KM test. And then they were subsequently sent to the lab. He is part of that chain in command. That is the nature of the testimony presented, Your Honor, with respect to the presumptive test.
So he is going to be asked, the court assumes, that he did not take the photographs, correct? Because Attorney Pearson did not take the photographs.
She did not, and the state did not offer them as a photographer. I offered them as a representation of what the map was. And
well, the only way, counsel, that the jury knows what was or what the garage floor looked like was through photographs.
yes,
The only way that your next witness can testify about what he swabbed is because we saw the photographs.
those, and there are more photographs that the state intends to introduce. He will testify to each one if necessary, if counsel doesn't is objecting to those photographs coming in, then I will lay a foundation for each and every one utilizing the screen and asking him if that is a fair and accurate representation of what he observed that day and what he sees as evidence. I have no problem doing that, Your Honor. I did not do that, by the way, with Sergeant Pearson, just for the court, because counsel did not have any objection to the photographs coming in to save time, but I will if that is what is needed.
Well, the testimony is going to have to reach the point where he says he swabbed this area because.
Yes.
And that's where this issue arises, correct?
If I may just clarify and actually bounce off what counsel said, what we discussed yesterday, and I believe the court order ruled an issue on, is the fact that the police officer can testify, or even lay witness can testify, that something appears to be blood-like. That would be the start of the testimony. Then I believe Detective Riley will testify as to, once he determined that it was blood-like, what his next steps were, either to swab it or test it for utilizing the KM test. So it's a link in the chain after. So just to keep those two issues separate.
Well, just to phrase it colloquially, he's going to testify, it looked like blood to me.
Yes.
Next, he's going to indicate that it was swabbed because it looked like blood to him.
Yes.
And also he performed a presumptive test, correct?
Yes, but just to qualify that, Your Honor, I don't believe that the only reason it was further swabbed and further steps were taken was simply because of the look of the item. It was the entire concept or the facts of the case, including the fact that we have Jennifer Dulos is a missing mother of 5 who dropped her kids off from school and never returned home, including the fact that it all happened in her home. The blood was positioned in one location and made it more likely that it was blood. There were numerous factors going into his decision. So it is a little more nuanced than that.
Well, counsel has indicated that there are a number of grounds on which he believes that a lay witness should not testify concerning the presumptive test. Now, what counsel laid out, and the court is just indicating what it understands from the argument. First, it may confuse the jury. Second is that it was prejudicial. Well, the issue is not whether it's prejudicial, it's whether it's unfairly prejudicial. So what the court is going to do is review State versus Moody and any related cases. And we have to take a recess for that.
And if I may, Your Honor, I would ask the court to review State v. Grant, which is 286 Con 499.
286 Con 499.
Yes, sir, it's a 2008 case, as well as State v. Downing, which
State v. Downing?
Downing, D-O-W-N-I-N-G, 68 Con App 388, 2002.
The citation again, please.
68 Con App 388, 2002 case. And of course, the state would always refer, yesterday I referred to State v. Schaefer, which is that 1975, 168 Con 309. So I would ask the court to review those, and then after, at some point, the state would like to be heard on the motion, on the legal analysis side of it. I would just ask the court for that time when the court is ready.
One other matter that we don't have to talk about this second, but what I just heard Attorney Manning say is that they're also going to suggest that the reason certain pictures were taken was because of all this hearsay that he heard. So they're going to do a narrative about what they think their theory is, which again is not necessary. This is the evidence technician who gathered evidence. I was also under the impression, based on what was said, that they took photographs at the same time. But if they didn't, I'm not going to object to the other photographs coming in through this witness, obviously, whoever took them, and there are multiple detectives who took photographs at various points. I'm not going to require the author of those photographs because any witness can say, is this fair and accurately represent what it looked like when you're in there? So I'm indicating that for the record. However, asking to explain why he took certain photographs so we can get into multiple narratives about the hearsay about the case, when all he needs to say is, I went in there, I had information, and I took photographs. What he heard about the case is not relevant to his actions. And it would also involve the confrontation, my right to confront and cross-examine about whatever he was told, whether it was accurate or inaccurate, where this witness won't be able to say. And I just think it'll take us on a little detour, unnecessary detour through allegations that were being made in the media and from other individuals. So I just note that may be part of what's going to be heard. I just don't know.
Can I just clarify again? This witness did not take the photographs. Counsel keeps reiterating about why photographs were taken. It's not the state's intention to offer testimony that Detective Riley ordered those photographs taken because the photographer meant to take that specific photograph. It's the actual exhibit seized.
Fair enough. I will amend my remarks. The fact that he took certain swabs does not depend upon the nature of the investigation in terms of what he had heard about what had happened in the days before he got there. He was assigned to take certain, it looks the way it looked, he took certain swabs, and then it went to the lab. I have no objection to any of that. It's this prejudicial notion that we have to get into either hearsay or worse, junk science as a basis, which the Supreme Court has said easily confuses the jury, especially since we won't be hearing from the lab until at least a week from now, as far as I know.
If I can, Your Honor, just clarify a few things here. And again, I would like to be heard on the law, so at some point I would, so before we get back into cases. But just to make sure that the record is very clear that the detective with his training experience is going to testify, and this is the offer of proof, about why he took a swab. It's not just because of the color. Otherwise, we'd be taking ketchup stains everywhere. It is because of his training and experience and his interpretation as the evidence officer. He has a right to that testimony. With respect to the law, I will reserve my argument for when Your Honor deems fit.
Thank you. Well, it is clear that the evidence officer was summoned to 69 Wells Lane because there was a missing persons report. So one could claim, well, that's hearsay.
I'm not objecting to that, Your Honor, just for the
Thank
record.
you. This is going to take some time for the court to review these cases. So, of course, the court would allow the jury to go into a recess at this point anyway. But we're probably not going to come back until 12:15. We'll stand in the recess until 12:15.
All rise. This honorable Supreme Court now stands in recess until 12:15.